hormones. So today we're going to be talking about natural fertility solutions with a guest speaker as well, my friend and a colleague, Aiden and Seraphim. So Aiden, can you just go ahead and start with telling us just a little bit about yourself?
Sure, thank you. So I am Aiden Seraphim. I am a licensed acupuncturist. I graduated from the Natural University of Natural Medicine in 2012 and have been in practice since then. I have a practice in Costa Mesa called Heart-Centered Transformational Wellness.
Okay, great. So with all of his experience at heart-centered transformational wellness over the years, I know that you've mentioned about having many successes with your patients. Can you just elaborate for a minute on that as well?
Sure. One of the things that I love working with the most is fertility. And I have, over the years, worked with numerous women and successfully getting pregnant. Some of them didn't have to utilize any fertility treatments, and just through lifestyle changes and acupuncture were able to get pregnant. And some of them have done IVF and IUI. So I'm excited to share some of the things that I have learned along the way.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So today, what I did want to just start off with is sharing with you a little bit of an outline of what we're going to cover. Um, in light of the National Infertility Awareness Week, we are presenting to share really how you listeners can take control of your fertility and health status. And a lot of infertility that is being talked about in this is the journey behind it. These days, there is confusion of what is truly wrong with your body, sometimes anger, that um, of not really understanding why your body or your uterus or ovaries are feeling like there's a defect, lack of answers or time from your doctor, the frustration of reading contradicting articles on what will truly benefit you, and even feeling the humility if people who may or may not be supportive of your feelings bring up this topic. And I just want to share that, guess what? You're not alone. There are millions suffering through this right now. And it really, just to just to put this into perspective for you, I think that it's important to kind of understand that it's some of the statistics behind it. In general, you have probably a 20% chance of conceiving when a healthy person is trying to conceive. And so if there's any factor that is changed, that can decrease that small percentage already. And it's said that 1 in 8 women, excuse me, 1 in 8 women actually struggle with infertility. And I think that that is probably an underestimate because, again, this epidemic is a silent epidemic. And it's something that not many women want to come out and talk about all the time. But that may be part of the solution. And so today, what I wanted to touch on is a little bit more about, let's see, am I sharing my screen? Is a little bit more about the, about what we can, what we can do ourselves and take hold of our fertility itself. So on this diagram, are you able to see it? Okay, so on this diagram, what you'll see is that really natural fertility solutions have multiple factors surrounding it. And the reason why is because a lot of times in this conventional paradigm, it talks about how the most of the time we're labeling someone with a diagnosis and then just treating that diagnosis, and that diagnosis usually has a medication involved with it. And so moving out of this conventional paradigm, kind of broadening our perspectives and understanding that there is lifestyle, nutrition, mental health, perception, and other therapies that can really help impact what our body is presenting as, can make a big difference. It's all about getting to the root of the problem. And so the first topic I did want to cover is lifestyle and how much lifestyle influences health. In fact, even our genes can change expression based on what choices we make on a daily basis. That in and of itself should be very comforting to know. It does take work then on your end to make sure that you're doing what you can, but I think that it's important to realize that the various different aspects like exercise, we know that we need to exercise, but in what capacity? Sometimes the biggest focus that I like to promote for my patients tends to be that we need people to just not be idle. Limit how much time you're actually sitting in a row. And so if it requires you to drink more water so that you actually have to get up to use the restroom more often, or just take stretching breaks every so often, either way, many of the studies, the newer studies, about the benefits of exercise actually point to limiting being sedentary. So move, walk, swim, bike, obviously all of those things are really good with getting some movement, but sometimes what women will miss tends to be the weighted movements or actually using weights. And it does not mean that you're going to build muscles and get big. A lot of times that can be the misperception, but really when you actually build some muscles, it will help regulate hormones like insulin, testosterone, and estrogen balance, and it makes a big difference in how you feel overall too. But to really tackle that stress, for my favorite exercise to actually recommend is yoga, and that kind of involves and encompasses some of the breathing, and then also kind of getting that fresh air and grounding yourself is really important too in that aspect. The second aspect of the lifestyle is sleep. There is actually an inverse relationship to cortisol and melatonin. And so if you're not sleeping well, it will affect the whole body, not just your energy through the day, but it will also affect how your hormones are from your pituitary gland will actually be produced, whether there will be enough of it, and whether that chain reaction will follow through with your reproductive organs as well. And so really some of the biggest offenders that I've seen recently tends to be the screens and electronics that we're it used to be that we're just drawn to it, but now that we're kind of mandated to use and use a lot of. So staying aware of that and avoiding screens before bed, keeping electronics at a distance, all of these are very nice to help with sleep. And also, I think Aiden has some great success with sleep for his patients as well. Can you go ahead and share some tips with us, Aiden?
Absolutely. Thank you. So, as you mentioned, there's actually been a lot of studies that have shown that disruptions in our sleep and circadian rhythm actually alter our levels of FSH and LH and prolactin, which are all important in the fertility process. And so, when those are altered, we have poor fertility and early pregnancy outcomes. And so, this is really, really important in there. Like you mentioned, is a natural cycle that our body goes through with melatonin and cortisol. Melatonin helps us get asleep, cortisol wakes us back up. And so, if you're having trouble falling asleep, taking melatonin is potentially a great option for you. But a lot of people have trouble staying asleep. And the aspect or the chemical that helps us stay asleep within our body is GABA. And so there are some herbs that are really helpful at promoting that, that include valerian, ashwagandha, melissa, which is in the mint family, and passion flower. I wanted to mention a little bit about valerian and ashwagandha really quickly. So valerian is actually probably one of the most potent herbs that you can use. It's often referred to as nature's Valium, and it really has a profound effect on helping you to calm down. It inhibits the breakdown of GABA in the brain, so it also eases anxiety. And it's important with valerian that you get the dose right, because if you use too much of it, it can have the opposite effect. And some people don't react great to valerian, so ashwagandha is a really great option because it's an adaptogen, which means that it really helps to deal with the stress response that's going on in the body. And studies have shown that it may help to reduce cortisol levels, actually. It also reduce inflammation, and it has an active compound in it that's very GABA-like, and that actually promotes the production of GABA in the brain. So those are two really great herbs that I would recommend. And then essential oils. One of the most researched essential oils for sleep is lavender. I think we've all heard about that. Lavender really helps to ease anxiety. It also works with GABA, and it reduces inflammation. And then there's oils like vetiver, which are very calming. They help you fall asleep and stay asleep. And geranium, which really works with anxiety and emotions like that. And there's acupuncture points that you can put these oils on that can help a lot. So with lavender, you can look these up to find their location, but you can put it on a point called Omnion, which is actually translated as peaceful sleep, as well as yin tong and liver 3. Vetiver you can put on kidney 1, and then geranium you can put on spleen 6 and pericardium 6.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Aiden. And so some of those specific things that can actually help with your sleep will have such a powerful impact. The next part of lifestyle that I think is also equally as important is our environment. A lot of times it's ubiquitous in our environment to really be exposed to toxins in general. But what I think is most important to realize tends to be that we um, we can actually control the exposure, a good amount of the exposure. So just as much as toxins are pretty complicated to get out of our system, probably the best method to keep our bodies clean is to avoid as much as possible. So kind of reducing that exposure and increasing elimination is the key. So reducing that chemical lineup of skincare, makeup, deodorants, and detergents. Some of these things you may not think of so much, but topically, just to put it into perspective, even with some of the bioidentical hormones that I prescribe, I'm able to get the same effects with some of the hormones, prescribing it topically rather than orally by cutting the dose to 1/5 of the amount. And so it can just put into perspective how much more we're actually absorbing through our skin, even more so than our intestines if we were ingesting these items. And so the only reason why I really like to emphasize that is because we know that, okay, it can be bad for you, so what? It's not going to kill me tomorrow, or little things like that. But specifically, these chemicals, they have aromatic structures that mimic our hormones. And so when they bind to those receptor sites, they will actually wreak havoc on our hormones themselves. And so these endocrine disruptors take form in not just maybe pesticides and other things like that, but it's also in these products that have phthalates and sodium lauryl parabens and other tooling especially. So staying conscious of this can really help you reduce some of that toxic burden on your body that your body has to metabolize. And then to improve that elimination, there are several methods that I will get to a little bit later in today's talk, but specifically by drinking lots of water. Typically, most of my patients that I speak to, they're not drinking half their weight in ounces. And so we know that 8 glasses of water is good, but what type of water? Adding a little bit of Himalayan pink salt to your water can actually help alkalinize the water, as well as increase some of the nutrients, like the minerals, that a lot of times people are more deficient in. And so that kind of ties us into that next topic, nutrition. And in nutrition, just so that you can see again what I'm talking about. In this next bubble of nutrition, eating organic is important, more so because of the chemical exposure again. I'd rather be exposed to 15% of the chemical rather than 100% of the chemical. So even for some of the naysayers about, oh, well, it's not really organic, well, we're doing what we can, right? And that's the same intention with how your nutrition goes. I like to focus more on what you should work on getting into your body rather than trying to say no to everything. We know we're supposed to avoid alcohol, caffeine, sugar, drugs, but what do we need to get in? We need to get in 5 to 10 servings of colorful seasonal vegetables in daily. And that concept of seasonal goes into traditional medicine with both Chinese medicine as well as even Ayurvedic medicine, using spices, particularly cinnamon, ginger, turmeric, and maca. Even in your cooking can be helpful too. So add some cinnamon to your morning oats with extra seeds and nuts in there, so you kind of get a nice blend of different nutrients there. Add ginger and turmeric for some spices to your dishes later in the day, the savory dishes, typically. And then maca, you can actually even add in your smoothies. One of my favorite places actually to grab a smoothie is Organic Juicery. They only have 2 locations, but they're amazing because they actually bother to be organic, but their Ayurvedic smoothies are amazingly delicious. But you can add things like maca and spirulina to your smoothies in those in places like that. So another thing that I wanted to bring up is zinc is a very deficient mineral, along with magnesium, omegas, iron, and vitamin A. So some natural source of zinc. My favorite is pumpkin seeds. That is very rich in zinc. For omegas, not just the fish oils, but you can get naturally occurring omegas in seeds like chia seeds, flax seeds, and other things like that. Your wild salmon. Iron, you can actually get a good amount in some of the more plant-based versions to actually also increase fiber intake. And so your black-eyed peas, the black beans, the beets, all of that will have iron, fiber, and a little bit of vitamin C for you too. And then vitamin A, it's important also because vitamin A in our multivitamins now actually contain the wide array of carotenoids, the antioxidants that are involved with it. So things like carrot, pumpkin, mangoes, all of those bright orange colors tend to be really helpful for that. But we still need to get a little bit of retinol, the actual vitamin A, in. The warning with that is you don't want to get too much in, because there is there is some research indicating that it's not beneficial for a developing fetus or for conception to have excessive levels of vitamin A. It's pretty hard to get to excessive levels through diet, so I wouldn't worry about getting as much of your bright orange fruits and vegetables in as possible. The next topic is organization. And so I'm going to go ahead and let Aiden take over for the next couple topics.
Thank you. Okay, so for organization, we talked a little bit about the importance of your circadian rhythms, but creating a rhythm or a schedule for yourself in general is going to be extremely important for fertility. And so what we want to do when we're creating a habit, because basically that's what we need to develop as we create a schedule for ourselves, is to get in touch with what our motive is. So I think it's really important to always come back to, like that desire to conceive, the emotion, the strong emotion behind the desire to have a family. Those sort of things can be great motivators to keep us dedicated or committed to the habits that we're going to develop. And so we also want to start really small when we're creating this organization for ourselves, or the schedule for ourselves in our life. And we want to celebrate all of the small victories that we have. So that's sort of like the premise that we want to start from. And then we want to write it down. We want to write it down, and we want to have it visible so that it's in a place that we can look at every day. And the things that we really want to focus on is creating this schedule for ourselves of when we're going to go to bed at night and when we're going to wake up in the morning. This is probably one of the most important things that we can do in order to get us back in that natural cycle that we've talked about. In addition to that, we want to really create a schedule of when are we going to have breakfast every day? When are we going to have lunch every day? And when are we going to have dinner every day? Our body really likes rhythm, and this is going to actually help balance our hormones as well. So as far as organization, those are really the main points that I wanted to make.
Okay, yes, and just to add to that, the organization, in some intent, there is something to that feng shui too, right, Aiden? So even staying organized with your calendar and how you set things up in your home, makes it's sometimes challenging to get to cleaning everything or keeping everything the way that you need, but at least the space that you're taking to actually bring your intention or having any type of practice, really incorporating that as well. So can the piece for the mind is actually one of my favorite, because there is so much that we can do with our mental health, and usually it has a stigma to it when you talk about mental health, like, oh, I don't have depression or anxiety, or even schizophrenia or any of those types of diagnoses. But it's not really so much as that. It's that mindset, more so. It's our perception. Things happen in life, but how do we react to it? And so some of the key points of that mental health, Aiden, can you go ahead and share a little bit more with us?
Absolutely. So this is my favorite topic. This is really where I focus so much of my work with the patients that I work with, because from a Chinese medicine perspective, there is a connection between the mind and the body that cannot be denied. And that's like at the root of the medicine that I practice. And so understanding those connections between our emotions and our physical reality, I think, are really important. And so when we're dealing with issues and topics like infertility, that experience, like you mentioned in the beginning, can be very stressful. So, I mean, everybody's going through their life with, a normal amount of stress, and then you add that onto it, it can put a lot of burden on families and on the people who are experiencing it. So that's why these mindfulness practices are so important. And actually, there have been studies that have shown that these mindfulness practices can improve fertility outcomes as well. And so when I start working with people, I try to make it really simple. Starting small, like I mentioned earlier, is very important. So maybe for most of us, we don't even remember to breathe at certain points. And when we get anxious or we start thinking about, is this really going to work? Is this ever going to happen for me? You know, like all of those thoughts that rat wheel in our head, we stop breathing. When we stop breathing, that only fuels, it's like fire for our anxiety. And so just simply the practice of catching yourself when you start to go into that sort of state of overwhelm and spin, and placing your hand on your lower belly and taking 3 slow, full, deep belly breaths. And as you take it, just really be with your body and feel the sensation of your hand as it goes out on the inhale and as it collapses on the exhale. So it's really like a physical embodiment of the breath that you're getting in touch with. And doing that 3 times can just like reset your nervous system. It can help get you out of fight or flight, and get you more into a parasympathetic state. And then for some of us, you know, we're so habituated to these anxiety thoughts that it can be really hard to not think while we're doing it. So the practice of box breathing can be really helpful. What that means is that we put an intention and we count. So on the inhale, we count to 4, we pause for 4. On the exhale, we exhale to 4, and then we pause again for the count of 4. And just that act of counting can really bring us back into our body, and help us to stay present as we are getting in touch with our breath. And then there are even breathing techniques that can help us to release stress. And so my favorite is a tension release breath, where we breathe in to the count of 4, pause for the count of 2, and then exhale to the count of 8. And as you're exhaling, your exhale is going to be twice as long as your inhale. And you're going to visualize yourself letting go, surrendering, relaxing. And then you pause for 2 and start again. So these are just some simple things that you don't have to like actually have a practice or sit down for a long period of time. You can just incorporate this type of breathing on the spot in your life. But it is also really helpful to create a meditation practice. And in the beginning, it can seem very overwhelming. So starting with just the breathing can be helpful, but I do recommend the research and the evidence has shown that consistency is the most important factor, more so than like sitting for hours at a time. You know, you don't have to sit for hours at a time to achieve benefits through meditation. Even 5 minutes of meditation a day can really help to, what it does is it resources you and it creates resilience within your nervous system. And so there are some apps that can really help you with that. Some people have a hard time just sitting and meditating on their own. So a short guided meditation can help you with that. So apps like Calm, Headspace, and Insight Timer can be really helpful. And the other thing is that with the meditation, one thing that's also very awesome is that it promotes GABA. So doing a short meditation before you go to bed can help you sleep better as well. And using the guided meditation for that can also be really helpful. So that's as far as the mindfulness goes. But my favorite technique that I use in my practice is called neuroemotionaltechnique, or NET. And what I've experienced with many women and fertility issues is that oftentimes there can be some limiting beliefs or stuck emotions or some traumas that are also part of what's getting in the way of their body being in a state of balance where it's able to achieve pregnancy. And so what I wanted to do really quick is to pull up a chart here just to show you. So right here, when I talk about the NET process, I'm going to mention specific pulse points. So these are the pulse points that I'm going to be referring to, and they are associated with different meridians, acupuncture meridians in the body. So these elements, fire, wood, water, metal, earth, and fire again are associated with organs, different organ systems. The fire up here is like the heart and small intestine, and there's different associations throughout. I don't have time to go into that now, but I just wanted to mention that. And then I'll keep this one up as I talk. So basically what neuroemotional technique does, it allows us to access a belief or an emotion that's stuck inside of our body. So it's something that like just consistently comes up for you, where you just feel like, dang, why am I dealing with this again? You know, and it feels like a real place of contention within you. We are able to, through this process of identification and muscle testing, identify which of those meridians that I mentioned earlier are being impacted. And then when we figure out the meridian, as you see here, then we can figure out which emotion is associated with that meridian. And then we're able to bring that emotion up in the present moment now, because healing only happens in the present moment now. So we're able to bring it up in a safe place, and through breathing and some awareness practices and accessing that pulse point that I showed you originally, and then the emotional zone right here. So I don't know if you can remember, but a lot of times when people get like super stressed out or overwhelmed, they go like this. That's like a natural tendency to take care of ourselves. It's an intuitive response, because this is the emotional access to the brain right here. So we hold the pulse point, we hold this, and then we do a breathing together that helps to allow that emotion to come up and just go through. It's just energy that's stuck in space and time, stuck in your body, and then it's able to be processed through and released, which is extremely powerful. I think that that's pretty much good for that aspect.
Okay, thank you. I think that those are great techniques, and thank you so much, Aiden, for sharing that, because a lot of times people don't know how powerful, or even how much we understand of this connection between our emotions and our physical manifestations, especially hormone balance. And so some of the things that I'd like to add to that is, you may have heard Aiden talk about the GABA and how and when we referred to cortisol and melatonin production and some of these things like that. So the great news is that there is specialty testing available, and so that is typically in some forms, the therapies that I like to implement will be surrounding some of the knowledge behind this. So these specialty labs actually can test for these imbalances, and really finding the root cause of these imbalances is where we can find the most success. It's that foundational piece that if we treat underlying issues, you may think it's unrelated, like eczema or hair thinning or just feeling cold all the time or anything like that. But a lot of times you'd be surprised, it's a very intricate connection to our hormones, our hormone balance, as well as how our perception is going to align with what type of inflammation or other things might be going on internally in our body. And so to kind of address that piece overall, a lot of times we know that stress is the root of a lot of issues within the body, and all of these 5 bubbles that we're covering today really is aimed at taking you through lifestyle, nutrition, organization, mindset, and therapies, because these therapies complete that bubble where some of the root things that you do on a daily basis may not cut it, and fills that gap between this place where you can do everything yourself to the spectrum of you need a lot of intervention, you need a lot of injections, you need a lot of therapy. And there's a time and place for all of that. There is nothing wrong with any part of the treatment process that your journey leads you to, but just to fill that gap and to understand that there are other options is really a key component. And so when we find the underlying causes, then we can see, oh, well, if your adrenals need some more support because it's not putting out as much cortisol as perhaps it should, to help with your energy or to help tame some of that inflammatory response within the body, or or X, Y, and Z, because I can really just keep going on that list. Um, Things like vitamin C or alpha lipoic acid are really nice. And so although vitamin C is naturally occurring and alpha lipoic acid is naturally occurring in some of our healthy diet options, there's even glutathione, there's still not as much of a concentration as you may need to help get that healing boost. And so supplementing things like vitamin C and alpha lipoic acid, glutathione are options. And um, further, sometimes you can actually only get most effective dosing when you utilize things like intravenous IV vitamin C administration, or alpha lipoic administration, or glutathione administration, or even intramuscular. Some of the L-carnitine or inositol can really start help boosting some of the key components that help with egg health, with energy at the cellular level, um, the regeneration of your body in general. And so with these therapies that I often utilize with my patients, they are very effective in the sense that we're able to replete some of the deficiencies at a much faster rate. And if you think about it, maybe even a whole handful of supplements will not do what that tiny little bit of medication or hormone injection that you're taking for your efforts and for your in order to conceive, that it can help boost that. And I've had patients that I've worked with, just like Aiden has mentioned, that have actually seen improved outcomes with their IUI and IVF, with it also concurrently administration of these other therapies. One of the things that I think is really therapeutic, and it's something that you can actually probably do on your own too, is infrared saunas, as well as the biomat. And so the infrared heat is not like high heat where it just very quickly heats up the external skin. Infrared heat typically travels deeper into the dermis and helps to increase circulation and detoxification. The biomat is amazing because it not only spreads heat, infrared heat throughout the body to help with relaxing, it actually helps with stress because it emits negative ions, and it's layered in the bed of it with amethyst crystals. And so that can be very grounding for a lot of people who whether you have a choice or not, are around a lot of electronics and electromagnetic frequencies. And lastly, what I did want to mention is, and this is mainly because a lot of times people don't realize that there are so many things, even therapeutically, that you can do, probably teetering on the edge of conventional and traditional medicines. And that's really just things that rejuvenate your body overall. If you think about it, your reproductive organs are the least necessary to survive. And so when we can elicit that growth hormone response all the way from the pituitary, which then trickles down to signal the rest of our whole body to start producing enough of these chemokines that increase collagen, things that increase production, building, some of, pointing towards building a new child, a new human being. You yourself have to be complete in all areas. And so all of these 5 bubbles help address these aspects of increasing that growth hormone naturally as well. And one of the other things that newer research is biologics helping some of that as well. So with some of my patients, I've already discussed some therapies with this, and really it's showing amazing promise to look into what these mesenchymal stem cells or other products can really do to help boost your own body's production of what it needs to be producing and reset your body. So as a review today, we discussed really aspects of taking charge of your lifestyle, nutrition, mindset, organization, adding in-home therapies that will count, and natural therapies that can start helping or start moving you and gaining traction faster towards your fertility journey and towards conception. But Aiden, I'm sure you'd agree with me that it's not just about just getting to that conception, which is obviously a very big deal, but a healthy conception so that a healthy pregnancy can endure as well.
Absolutely. And I would love to take a moment to talk about my favorite therapy associated with fertility, and that is acupuncture. There's growing evidence that shows that acupuncture can really help in the fertility process. And this is because of several reasons. One thing is that acupuncture is going to help relieve the stress that accumulates on the nervous system. It also helps to promote blood flow to your reproductive organs, as well as balance your endocrine system. And acupuncture has also been shown to improve egg quality and sperm quality, which can help in both female and male infertility. And so I've used acupuncture for both IVF and IUI. And so for IVF and IUI, there's going to be a different schedule that the sessions will need to take. But the biggest, most important thing to understand is that it takes several months to help get the body into a state of balance in regular acupuncture sessions before you start either of those interventions. And I just wanted to share really quickly, because I think we might be running out of time, but I have a patient recently who was going through IUI, and she started seeing me a couple of months before. She had several IUI procedures that were not successful before she had acupuncture. And then she had one that she had gotten pregnant, but the pregnancy was not able to sustain itself. And so she came to me, and after a couple of months, she did the IUI procedure again, and we timed the acupuncture appropriately. And she, I have to say, has been able to get pregnant. And now she is actually able to stay pregnant. I think she's at 10 weeks now. And so it's really, really exciting, the potential that acupuncture has in helping this whole process.
Thank you for sharing that, Aiden. Particularly there are so many rewarding stories that that hopefully help inspire all of you out there to really look into some of the key answers that these natural therapies can provide, but also some of the actually working with women who have struggled through this process and really assisted them is ensuring to know as well. And so with that, I would like to say that acupuncture, some of the mindfulness therapies, meditation, yoga, a lot of these types of things are very, very commonly pretty standard on my treatment plan for a lot of my patients. And along with that, some of the other therapies that I mentioned earlier. And so hopefully this offers a little bit more information on what you can do yourself to take charge of your health, your reproductive health, and also learn a little bit more and be educated about what other natural solutions are out there. I'm gonna just go ahead and let you all know that Aiden and I are really just passionate. We just want to help you out. And so we we really appreciate your time that you've taken out today for joining us. And so we will be offering a little bit more in the sense of for our viewers right now to actually take advantage of some offers. So Aiden, did you want to go ahead and let them know what surprise you have for them?
Sure, yeah. So as I mentioned, in my experience, the regularity of acupuncture, along with all of the other topics that we discuss, is really important and essential. And so I know that can pose a financial burden oftentimes for a lot of people. And so I wanted to offer everybody on the call today something special to help make their dream more affordable. And that is a monthly membership where for $360 a month, it would include weekly acupuncture sessions, along with weekly coaching and accountability check-ins on the important areas that we've talked about today, because I know that anytime we're trying to create new habits in our life, it can be tough, and it takes time and it takes a lot of support. And so that would also be included along with that, including the nutrition, sleep, exercise, mindfulness, self-care, and emotional release work that I mentioned. So this is $190 savings for the first month, and it is $140 savings for the subsequent months. So I'm going to put my email in the chat box here. You can email me, and I will email you out a summary of all of the things that we discussed today in a document. And then also we can talk about potentially working together.
Great. Thank you so much, Aiden, for joining us today and sharing what you have experienced and what you specifically work with. And I hope that everyone appreciated some of the knowledge here today. I also very I don't know if that I've really put it out there much, but through my own journey have really just found a passion to help anyone at all struggling to conceive and really make their dream come true as well. So I'd like to individually offer you a special package if you are interested in working with me. So please feel free to email me at verveholistic@gmail.com to find out more about what we can do. We can set up a complimentary session and then a 15-minute session, and then go from there on how we want to move forward. And with that, I will open it up to if anyone had any questions that they're dying to have answered, to please go ahead and type in the chat for us. I think that there's probably not much in terms of questions that we haven't already answered then, Aiden. So do you have anything else you'd like to close with?
I think a question just popped up.
Oh, okay. So we have a question about what suggestions we have for secondary infertility. And, you know, it's kind of interesting that that you bring this up, and it's a good question, because I think that just as much as anyone is struggling to have their first child, it is so important and so worth the journey in pursuing and really working towards that second or third or fourth child. If it's a value to you and that is your dream, then that is something that one of the biggest things I think will affect that is mindset, and how that mindset really, if you clear out that perception, the other dynamics around maybe emotions and other techniques that are underlyingly, I think that would be very important to address first and foremost. And alongside with that, sometimes that secondary infertility piece at least gives us some notion that you if you're able to get pregnant one time around and have a healthy pregnancy and a healthy child, to then really just reteach your body and provide a bigger boost of what it needs to actually follow through with it again. And so sometimes, not just in the form of self-care and mindset, but also in maybe some of the more aggressive therapies like the biologics I have mentioned, might be a good avenue to look into. And then we have another question. Aiden, I'll let you go ahead and answer this as well. So, I'm sorry, do you have any suggestions for secondary infertility?
Yes, I absolutely agree with a lot of what you just were talking about. And I think that the NET or neuroemotional technique process that I was speaking about could be very helpful. And in addition to that, I think that, getting your body into these cycles that we've talked about, using lifestyle and nutrition and sleep and exercise and all of those things, removing any, really looking at, I mean, chemical toxicity in our environment is so prevalent and it's in almost everything. And so I think a lot of people are surprised, even when they think that they're using natural products, that they're actually being exposed to a lot of chemicals still. There's an app called the Environmental Working Group. I highly suggest that you download that because you can actually bring it with you when you go into the store. Like, I was shocked to find, like, in Whole Foods, a place that you would expect to find, natural products that are completely chemical free and healthy and good for you, that so many of those products still contain a lot of the harmful endocrine disruptors and chemicals. So you can take this app and you can scan items and it will actually rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, and it'll tell you which products have harmful chemicals in it. So those are really, in acupuncture, I've had success, with secondary infertility. So I also think that that's a great option.
Great, thank you so much, Aiden, for that extra input. And then we have another question here that talks about supplements for stress and anxiety, the valerian and ashwagandha, if we have any specific brands that we like best or anything specific to look for in the sea of products. So, Aiden shared a little bit of one product he really liked through the chat, and then overall, what I'd like to share is that I do have an online dispensary for products that are healthcare professional brands as well. And the bigger reason for this, and that's also what Aiden shared too, is one of those brands, is that they actually spend a little bit more time trying to make sure that their products are clean, that they don't have some of the extra binders and fillers, which really can add up if you think about it, taking on a daily basis. And so that, as well as the form of the nutrient itself, and if it's an herb, when they harvest it, what part of the herb they are harvesting. And so one of my favorite brands for a lot of the herbs that help with balancing hormones and stress and anxiety is Vitanica. So they have over-the-counter brands, but the healthcare professional brands really can help getting you some of the better nutrients and the higher, I guess, therapeutic levels of the dosing that you can't really find over the counter typically as well. So I think that is everyone's question. If anyone else has any more questions, please again, feel free to email us at verveholistic@gmail.com. And I can also send you the link to actually order some specific products for you as well through that. And then Aiden is available through the contact that he has shared through the chat. You can email him at heartcenteracu@gmail.com. And again, thank you so much for spending the time with us today. We loved having you on the call. Aiden? Oh, you're on mute still.
Yes, thank you for having me. I really love and feel passionate about talking about all of these things. And please feel free to email me if you have any questions regarding any of the things that I talked about.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, everyone. We look forward to hearing and talking to you again soon. Thank you, Aiden. Have a nice day. It was great to have you.